Our main scripture text this morning comes from Paul's letter to the Philippians. We'll be looking at the 4th chapter, just 4 verses, beginning with verse 10. I rejoice in the Lord greatly that now at last you have revived your concern for me, but I had no opportunity to show it. Not that I am referring to being in need, for I have learned to be content with whatever I have. I know what it is to have little, and I know what it is to have plenty. In all circumstances, I have learned the secret of being well-fed and of going hungry, of having plenty and of being in need. I can do all things through God who strengthens me. Here ends the reading of God's holy word. May God bless it for our hearing and understanding. My mother, who many of y'all knew, Donna, used to sit in the choir in the soprano section right over there and sang in the church choir for decades. My mother was the youngest of 7 children until at age 13, she became an older sister. My grandparents' home was modest. My mom, in fact, shared a small bedroom with 2 sisters, and the 3 of them slept in a twin or a single bed. The one in the middle had to flip-flop. Her head and feet were in the opposite direction. How'd you like to go to sleep every night with somebody's feet, your sister's feet, in your face? How about that? I grew up with 2 younger brothers. Many of you know my brothers Steve and Dave, and we shared one bedroom, though we did have separate beds. Though by the time I reached junior high, that was called in those days, I did get my own bedroom, but Steve and Dave shared a bedroom until I went off to college. My wife and I renovated our house when she was pregnant with our triplets, so that once they got out of the nursery and the cribs, each of them would have their own bedroom and their own bed. That, in a nutshell, 3 generations of my family is how America has changed over the past 75 years. The nation that grew up during the Great Depression knew hardship and war. Just about everybody was poor, but nobody realized it because everybody was. You were just the same as everybody else. My mom, as I mentioned, was one of 8 children. She did not get a lot of personal attention. Family life revolved around the family as a whole, not around individuals, and everybody in her family had a chore to do. Everybody worked in the family garden because it was the family garden that fed the family. My brothers and I grew up with a similar work ethic because our parents believed hard work was good and taught valuable lessons. Each of us had after-school jobs by the time we were 12. I actually began carrying the afternoon Huntington Advertiser when I was 10 and a half years old. Now, the rule was you didn't start till 12. I'm not sure how the newspaper let me start at 10 and a half, but that's what happened. I guess it's too late to sue them for that. Today, it's much harder to instill these work values in teenagers today because the way society has changed. Newspaper routes no longer exist. Mom and pop stores that might have in the past hired a neighborhood 14-year-old to sweep the floors and stock the shelves, they've all been gobbled up by big box stores, right? And they all have specific rules about when you can be hired. Millennial and Gen Z children have grown up at a time when just about every kid gets a trophy. They can read their books online, so who needs to go to a library? And where Walmart and Amazon make it possible for parents to give their kids everything imaginable at any price range. It is difficult to raise children today without them growing up entitled. Entitlement is becoming a bane on our society. It affects every sector of our nation, rich, poor, old, young, every racial and ethnic group, every stripe of political parties. No one is immune to entitlement. in some ways, I think my grandparents had an easier time raising my parents during the Great Depression than the challenges parents have today. In fact, you may have seen it this week. The Surgeon General wrote an essay about the stress level of parents today, about the mental health of parents worrying and trying to guide their children in this post-COVID age. Philippians may have been the Apostle Paul's favorite church. At least according to his writing, he was always most affectionate towards them. And by the end of his letter to the Philippians, Paul is telling them, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. In particular, Paul is appreciative of a generous gift the Philippian church made to him while he was imprisoned by Roman authorities. Though he is quick to say he wasn't in need. In the passage I read just a few moments ago, Paul said, I have learned to be content with whatever I have. I know what it is to have little, and I know what it is to have plenty. In any and all circumstances, I have learned the secret of being well-fed and of going hungry, of having plenty and of being in need. I can do all things through God who strengthens me. Now, oftentimes in that passage, we focus on that last sentence about the God who strengthens us, which is an important sentence. But the sentence that jumps out to me is where Paul says that he has learned to be content with whatever he has. I have learned to be content with whatever I have. Now, content here does not mean complacent. The Apostle Paul was always driving himself in serving the churches he started. Complacency was not in his vocabulary. Content does not mean complacent. Content means that after all he did, with all the time he had, with all the resources, after he did everything he could, content meant he was satisfied with whatever he had, with whatever situation he was in. This is a foreign concept today. We live in a society where practically nothing is enough. And it is wreaking havoc on our children. Teenagers today are lonelier and more unhappy than they were just a decade ago. And a generation ago, the numbers are significantly different. And here's the surprising thing. The more affluent you are, the more likely your children are unhappy. It's easy to compare the mental health of children who are attending public school and the ones who are attending private school. And if your children are attending private school, they are 2 to 5 times more likely to have anxiety, depression, attention problems, and rule-breaking episodes than students in the general population. Prosperity and how we are handling it as families and as churches is having a negative effect on our children. In a society where nothing is ever enough, prosperity only whets the appetite for more. So how do we help our children, our grandchildren, the children of this congregation? And I'm talking here to all of us, not just the parents and grandparents here. All of us have a responsibility to the children and the teenagers of this congregation. How do we help them to learn to be content with whatever they have and with whomever they are? Their mental health is more important than anything they have or any achievement they can make. How do we help them to learn that they will be enough and that they have enough in the God who strengthens them? Well, for the second week in a row, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, okay? Don't get used to this. First, it is really important at a young age for families to set limits for your children and to stick to them. Now, these may be limits about bedtime and screen time. For those of you my age, screen time is TV, phone, computer device, anything with a screen. Mealtime, and maybe most important, limit on material possessions. Children who get everything they want never question their thirst for more. In one sense, it really doesn't matter what your limits are. You as parents and grandparents, you work on those limits. It's important that whatever your limit is, that you just have them, that you talk about why you have these limits, and that you stick to them. Now let me tell you, children are the most optimistic people in this world. If mom or dad say, for instance, there's not going to be any ice cream tonight after dinner because we've had too many sweets today, you can bet your children are going to ask a little bit more. Can we have some ice cream or some other dessert? And if you say no once, twice, that doesn't mean they're going to stop. In fact, some of you have children who are born sales representatives in the future. They are going to keep asking and asking and asking. And if you finally give in on the 20th time, you have cursed yourself for a long time, because you have just taught them that if they plead enough, if they use the right voice enough, you are going to give in. Parents, if you're going to give in, do it quickly for your own sake. Don't wait till the 20th time, okay? That's just a rule of thumb. If you set good boundaries for your household and your limits for your young children, they will learn to be content within those limits. And as they become older children and teenagers, you can help them to set their own boundaries for themselves by giving them choices. Let's do a pretend moment. Let's say pretend for a moment that your family has set up a celebration for grandmother's 75th birthday on the same night when your middle schooler had been invited to a sleepover at a friend's house. Now you've got a conundrum. Grandmother's 75th birthday, your middle schooler's important sleepover at a friend's house. Consider giving your child a choice within boundaries. You can say, we would like you to go with us, and grandmother would like you to be with us for this big celebration. But we also know going to the middle school sleepover is really important to you. So we will allow you to do that if you first write a very loving note to your grandmother and how you will visit her another time, just you and her, and that you will get your weekend chores done before you go. Because when you come back to those things, you are a zombie for the next 24 hours. You know you're not going to get anything done. And then let your middle schooler choose. Let her choose her boundaries. Let her decide which of those things she wants to do within those limits. Giving our teenagers a choice in life to choose their boundaries and their limits is a way of helping them have agency, that they can make the decisions and they can control themselves within these boundaries and limits. You know, we really can't make our children be content. We can only teach them how to set their own boundaries and their own limits and learn to be content within them. Number 2, focus on the effort, not the result. Not every student can get straight A's. Just not going to happen for all of us. Your child may be a good, hardworking student, may be a person of great character, but they may never get calculus or algebra. It just may never happen, all right? So watch how you handle rewards in your family. If your rewards are always based on the results, then you're already setting your child up for some failure right from the start. Can you figure out ways to reward effort? Because whether you're a C student or an A student, you can still make the effort to learn as much as you possibly can in the subjects that you find most challenging. Not every athlete can finish the race first, but every athlete can practice and work on skills. Give your child and your grandchild the same hug after a fourth place finish as you would for a first place finish. Whether he said his lines perfectly in the school play or forgot them partway through. Focus on the effort, not the result. Losing, in fact, teaches us things that winning never can. One of which is humility, which may be one of the most important lessons of life. And if your child wins all the time, then make sure you have him play tougher competition. One, for the humility, and because better players make you better. I never forget when my daughter Abby was starting to perfect the first time her jump serve in volleyball. She was playing on a practice volleyball team and had just really started getting the groove with her jump serve. And one game, it was magical. She did her jump serve, perfect serve, ace. Second one, ace. Next one, service winner. After 5 in a row, the other team called timeout. After 2 more aces, the coach started talking. The coach on the other team, which was really a big no-no in travel volleyball, the coach on the other team started saying things out loud to throw Abby off her game. Finally, on the 10th serve in a row, the other team won the serve back. Afterwards, Abby was livid. She could not believe how this other coach had been so unfair and gotten her off her rhythm and so forth. And she went on, and I was the listening dad. I was a good listener. I just let it float out. When all anger and upset piece got out of the way, I finally said, "You know, Abby, I think she did you a favor." "What?" she said, startled. I said, "If you keep getting better at this jump serve, and you start serving this well against Myers Park and Providence High, 2 of their high school rivals in Charlotte," she said, "do you think they're going to just let you keep doing that? They're going to do things to get inside your head and get you off your mark." If your child is finding success, continue giving them challenges so they can work on the effort, but don't worry about the result. We can't make our children content. We can only teach them to focus on their effort and to be proud of their hard work and the effort to master a subject or a skill, and then to learn to live with whatever the result is. You tried your best, you tried your hardest. That's all we ask. 3, teach your children that your family shares its blessings with the poor and the less fortunate, as Jesus taught us to do. Practice generosity in ways that your children and grandchildren can see you give, and to make it possible for them to be involved in the giving as well. When you're shopping for some food that you're going to give to the Cridland Center, take your children with you. Have them pick out things. When it's the beginning of the school year and we're buying things for school supplies for children who are less fortunate, take your children with you. Have them make their list of what they want to have for school, and then ask them to donate out of their pile something that another child will need. Get them involved in practicing generosity. Generosity takes practice. Now, I want to mention a couple things just straight to the teenagers this morning. Caroline and Cameron and Leo and Leighton and Campbell, Macy, Brooklyn and Jules, Carter and Fletcher, Ella. Growing up is not easy. And this decade may be tougher than decades in the past. It is not easy. The only way, Liam, I forgot you were hiding right there. The only way you can get ready for all that is through your own effort and hard work. If your parents just give you everything, you will not be prepared for what awaits you in college and as a young adult. So in your own mind, begin thinking about ways you need to be challenged and ask your parents for more responsibility. Ask them, cook a meal for the family one time. Just ask for responsibility where you can do things without their supervision. And it's okay if you mess up. It's okay if things get messed up. It's all right. That's a part of the learning process. Ask them for challenges. Ask them for responsibility. Even if it's nothing more than having afternoon time where you and your friends get together and play, and you all decide how you're going to play. Maybe you're going to do a touch football in a yard someplace. Or as a teenager did a few weeks ago, you can do beach ball, volleyball. Whatever it is, you decide how you're going to do it. Because organizing the games is the most important lesson of the games. But too often adults get in the way. Teenagers need to do their own games under their own rules. Ask your parents for responsibility and the freedom that comes with that responsibility. And you will learn lessons for this life that nothing else can prepare you for, other than doing it yourself, making mistakes, and doing it again. Dan Kinlan, in his book, Too Much of a Good Thing, which was subtitled, Raising Children of Character in an Indulgent Age. Dan and his team studied 1,700 parents and children and found 10% of the children were too good to be true teenagers. They didn't drink or smoke, they didn't use drugs, they weren't depressed or mean or spoiled or self-centered, and they worked best at school without being obsessed about it. And they found some common traits in these teenagers. I'm going to mention 4 of them. Their families frequently ate dinner together, and they sat at the table and they talked with each other about how the day went, about what their hopes were, about what's coming up next. They laughed together. They told stories. The second thing was that all of them had responsibilities at home. Some responsibility at home, which included keeping their rooms clean, because every room in the house is a part of the family. So everyone worked on something in the house. Number 3, there was limits about their phone use during the day, some restrictions that the family had all agreed to. And number 4, they did community service as a family. And when you think about it, that's not really a high bar, right? Just eating meals together, having some responsibilities or chores at home, some restrictions on phone use, and doing community service. Do those things. We will give our children a chance to grow up empowered, not entitled in this society. Helping children and young people learn to be content with whatever they have, whether they have plenty or whether they have little, is a pathway to learning to trust that they can do all things with the God who strengthens them. You know, the easy part of teaching our children in teenagers' faith is the teaching of it, teaching them to follow Jesus. The hard part is living this stuff, right? Parents, we don't expect you to do that alone. We as a congregation are here to help you. And where we fall short, you let us know. You let me know. We'll talk about it. May God help us to learn and to teach our children to how they can be content with whatever they have in any and all circumstances. May we learn the secret of being well-fed and of going hungry, of having plenty and of being in need. May we learn to trust the God who strengthens us to do all things. Amen.